This is The Space Shot, episode 324 for April 3rd, 2018. 2001, A Space Odyssey. I'm John Molnix. 50 years ago today, on April 3rd, 1968, 2001, A Space Odyssey premiered in theaters. It's been a couple of years since I last saw the movie, and even longer since I've read the books. I forgot how weird the opening sequence is in the movie, with the apes fighting, getting eaten by predators, and then the monolith. The practical special effects in this movie are phenomenal, even now, 50 years later. After the scene with the primates and the monolith is complete, we go to a space sequence with a Pan Am space clipper traveling to Space Station 5, a massive spinning orbital outpost. I can't underscore how incredible the special effects are in this movie, from the IBM computer panels in the space clipper to the details visible on the space station, like the Hilton Hotel, a Howard Johnson, and even an AT&T picture phone booth. The zero-gravity sequences in the lunar shuttle and the space clipper are a fantastic example of the work that can be done without expensive computer graphics. There's even instructions for a zero-gravity toilet on the lunar shuttle, and they look as detailed as everything else in this fictional world. Amazingly enough, this movie is free to view at archive.org, so somehow if you've never seen it, go give it a watch for free at this website. I'll be linking to that in the show notes. I don't want to give away too much, even though this movie has been out for a half century, but here's a little bit from the beginning of the movie.
However, I accept the need for absolute secrecy in this, and I hope you will too. Now, I'm sure you're all aware of the extremely grave potential for cultural shock and social disorientation contained in this present situation, if the facts were prematurely and suddenly made public without adequate preparation and conditioning. Anyway, this is the view of the council. The purpose of my visit here is...
After that meeting, the action moves across the lunar landscape in a small shuttle towards the location of a second monolith. I had to laugh at the inclusion of crustless space sandwiches and some coffee. It seems in this fictional world they've solved the breadcrumb problem with sandwiches in space, something that we definitely don't have now. On a random note, the actor that played Gary Mitchell in the Star Trek episode Where No Man Has Gone Before is also in this movie, something I never caught until I rewatched it for today's episode. We will be revisiting 2001: A Space Odyssey in the future. I'll be talking with some people about this movie after I have time to read the books again, as well as rewatching the movie. The demands of a daily podcast keep me on task for upcoming episodes, so it's a little tricky to be able to relax and watch movies or read fiction as much as I normally do. Some of the big themes of this movie are artificial intelligence in the form of the HAL 9000 computer, human evolution, and the nature of alien life. I'm blown away by how well this movie holds up compared with today's science fiction movies and TV shows. Who would have thought that a sci-fi movie from a half century ago would still be one of the most visually stunning and important movies in the history of cinema? It speaks to the lengths that Kubrick and Clark went in order to make a film that can stand the test of time. The mood and the atmosphere of this movie are both mesmerizing and completely engrossing. The sequences where all you can hear is the hiss from a spacesuit life support system and the character breathing are arresting, and they stand in stark contrast to the bombastic and unrealistic explosions and sound effects that most sci-fi movies employ to drive action and suspense. According to an article I read, there was only 40 minutes of dialogue in the roughly 2.5-hour long movie, which is pretty nuts. One of the books that continued to pop up while I was researching today's episode is called Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick, Arthur C. Clarke, and the Making of a Masterpiece. I haven't had a chance to read it, but it's on my Amazon wishlist and my to-do list for reading before we revisit this movie in a future episode. I'm linking to this book and a few others in the show notes. The end sequence is unlike anything else I've ever seen in a movie, and it's something we'll be discussing more in a coming episode. I hope all of you have a fantastic rest of your day. I appreciate each and every one of you that listen to the podcast every day. Since you're here and I've got your ear, give me 30 seconds of your time. I'd be incredibly grateful if you could share the podcast with your friends and family. Tag one of them and let them know about your favorite episode. I'd also really appreciate it if you could venture into the Apple Podcasts app or your podcast app of choice and leave a review for The Space Shot. A steady stream of reviews helps ensure The Space Shot is more visible in the Apple Podcasts app. As always, the show notes have more information on today's episode. You can hit me up on Instagram and Twitter. Find me at John Molnix. I'm always up to chat. You can also connect with me on Facebook. Just search The Space Shot or check out the links in the show notes and you'll find me. I'm John Molnix, and I'll catch you on the flip side.